Hi, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, depending on what time you're listening to this. So we've been on this series, MS-900 study series, and today we want to continue. If you check, we have this to cover the Microsoft Azure, which is speaking to describe cloud concepts that we have tried to look at, and then we also have the Introduction to Microsoft 365, describe Microsoft 365 apps and services. And then the third one is going to be Introduction to Microsoft 365, describe Microsoft 365 security and compliance capabilities. Then we have Introduction to M365 in terms of describing the price and pricing, which is talking about licensing part of the product. So if you've not subscribed to this channel yet, you may have to click on that. But just before we start, a quick introduction. My name is Joseph Afesu. I'm a Microsoft MVP and MCT, and I'm really happy that we want to continue from where we stopped. So if you open this first one, right, you have it broken down into different modules, and that speaks to describing the concepts of cloud computing, which we have covered in the previous um, videos within the playlist, right? And then the other one we covered was also describe the benefits of cloud services. So we went into the benefits in terms of high availability and scalability. We went on to look at the benefit of reliability and predictability, and then the benefit of security and governance. Then we also went into the benefit of manageability in the cloud. So this we have concluded, and for this video we are going to be looking at this, right? So we'll look at the describing the cloud service types that you have. So this module really is going to cover different cloud service type and share some of these use case and benefits to align with each of the service type. Okay, so let's see here immediately what the module has here. So we are expecting that when we finish this training today, I mean in this particular video, you should be able to describe infrastructure as a service, you should be able to describe software as a service, and then you should be able to describe platform and then software as a service. And then you are supposed to be able to identify the use case for each of the cloud services, right? So that said, what is cloud service? So when we talk about the service models, right, is when you hear the word IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, right? Then when you talk about deployment models or types of cloud is when you hear public, private, you hear hybrid, right? So that is talking about the deployment model. So when you talk about the service models, you talk about these, right? I'm saying this because it's usually very confusing to people. All right, so let's go to the next one here. So what is it? Describe infrastructure as a service, right? Or what is generally called IaaS. So it's the most flexible category of cloud service. Most flexible in the sense that it provides you with a minimum amount of control for your cloud resources. I mean, the maximum amount of control for your cloud resources. In the terms of the infrastructure as a service model, the cloud provider is responsible for maintaining only the hardware and the network, but most importantly, the physical security of the hardware and the network infrastructure. But you are responsible for everything else in terms of the operating system, in terms of the configurations, in terms of maintenance of the configurations that you have in there, and then the network configuration within it, then the database and the storage configuration, and so on. So the system or the cloud service provider only provides you with the platform, I mean the bare metal, I would say, where you are going to carry out all your configuration. So you choose what you want to do, right? So a typical example of this can be a virtual machine, right, as provided to you as a service. So with infrastructure as a service, you are renting the hardware. I think that's the right word, right? You are renting the hardware in the cloud data center. But what you do with the hardware is up to you. You choose what to do to it. So that's what you need to be aware of. And that's why under shared responsibility model, that was clearly stated, right? So if we go by this now, before explaining the software and the platform, it may be a bit confusing. Or if you look at the on-prem, it's a lot, right? So when we get to the front, we may have to come back to look at this again. But just to look at it from the surface, if you have the places where you have the blue mark, it means that the deep blue mark, it means that you are the one responsible for it as a customer, right? And then for the ones that are blue, right, the sky blue are the ones that the CSP or the cloud service provider is responsible for. While if you have the one that is halfway, right, in form of diagonal halfway, then it means that the cloud service provider is responsible for part and you are responsible for the remaining. So the shared responsibility model applies to all the cloud service type, including the IaaS, the PaaS, the SaaS, right? So the cloud service provider is responsible for maintaining the physical infrastructure and its access to the internet at all cases. So you are responsible for installation, configuration, patches, and updates when it comes to um, the infrastructure as a service. But let's look further. What are some of those scenarios where infrastructure as a service might make a lot of sense to you? Lift and shift migration. So you are setting up a cloud resource similar to your on-premises data center, right? And then simply moving what you have running on-prem to the cloud. So you just needed a platform where you would just move everything you had up to that place in terms of configurations, in terms of installations, you have everything ready. You want to do like a lift and shift to the cloud. That would be like the best solution for you so that it can be flexible enough for you to adopt what you currently have in your on-premises environment. So testing and deployment, also you can just say, okay, let me have this environment to mimic. So you have like an established configuration for deploying and testing an environment that needs to rapidly, be replicated, right? So you are getting like it's similar or an exact infrastructure you have currently on premises where that solution was built, and you want to push it to a similar machine, maybe in Azure, to test how it's going to behave, right? So you can start up or even shut down the different environment rapidly with infrastructure as a service while maintaining complete control. Of course, you can just decide to turn off your VM, right? And nobody says anything about that because everything is under your own control. So what if we move on to platform as a service, right? So platform as a service is actually a middle ground, right, between renting a space in a data center and then paying for complete and deploy solution as software as a service. So what this means is that if you have, let me bring up a paint right now. So what this means is that you have, for example, you have the infrastructure as a service, right, which is the IaaS, and then you have the software as a service at the other extreme. So what the description for platform as a service is saying is that platform as a service is just standing the middle way. So for this, you are for infrastructure as a service, yeah, IaaS, you are completely in charge of everything apart from the fact that you are being provided the carcass, will I say, yeah, for you to carry out all your installations or your configuration. While for SaaS, right, you are not responsible for any of the setup. You're only responsible mainly for your identity and ensuring protection. This is like you have everything to control. This is like you have nothing to control, you just use. Then for platform as a service is standing midway between the software as a service where you are almost like not doing anything, and then the infrastructure as a service when you have like a lot to do. But this guy is sitting midway in between infrastructure and software as a service. That's what we're saying. So platform as a service is well suited to provide a complete deployment environment without headache of maintaining all the development infrastructure. So it's just like a platform. You bring your code, you can run there. So looking at that, the shared responsibility model applies to all the cloud service type, definitely. So platform as a service split the responsibility between the cloud service provider and you who is also consuming the product, right? So the cloud service provider is responsible for maintaining physical infrastructure, even as in the case of infrastructure as a service, and its access to the internet, just like IaaS, right? So in platform as a service model, the cloud service provider will also maintain the operating system, the database, the deployment tool. So for example, in terms of the infrastructure as a service, right? The service provider is not taking care of your operating system. But for platform as a service, you are the one responsible for the operating system, right? And then for platform as a service, the cloud service provider is the one responsible for the operating system, unlike the IaaS. That's what I meant to say. So the database also is being maintained by them. So think of the platform as a service like using a domain joined machine. So it maintains the device with regular updates, the patches, and then it does the refreshing by itself. So depending on the configuration, the cloud service provider may be responsible for network settings and even connectivity with the cloud environment. So network and application security and directory infrastructure all belongs to them to take care of. So think of it as scenarios where this is used to be you are developing an application. So PaaS will provide a framework that developers can build upon to develop a customized cloud-based application, which is a similar way to you to creating Excel macro, and PaaS lets you create an application using the built-in software components. So everything is just there for you to come run your code. So cloud features such as scalability, the high availability that we've discussed in the previous video, and the multi-tenant capabilities are all included. So this reduces the amount of code that developer must now do, right? Analytics or business intelligence tools provide as a service with platform as a service allow organizations to analyze and mine their data, finding insights and pattern, then predicting outcome, improving forecasting, product design decision, investment returns, and other business decision can be taken from there. So but the bottom line of this is that they're providing you with the operating system, right? They are providing you with a platform, then bring your code and run it there. Now, what happens is that if the infrastructure, the underlying infrastructure is having an issue, you have the you are within the service level agreement to raise a ticket with the cloud service provider for assistance, right? And then if the platform where you're running your code is not also working properly, you can also write the cloud service provider for support. But if the code itself is not running, then it is not the responsibility of the cloud service provider. You have to take care of that yourself, right? Because you are really the owner of the code. Now, for software as a service, right? Software as a service is the most complete and the most complete cloud service model from a product perspective. So with software as a service, you are essentially renting or using fully developed application. Example, your emails, your financial software, your messaging application, your connectivity software are all common example of software as a service. You don't do anything. Like you just use Microsoft Teams, you just use Excel in M365, you just use Outlook, you just use A lot of application, your OneDrive service, you don't care about who maintains, who keeps, and who takes care of the machine that hosts the platform that the code is running, and you are not even concerned about the code also. You just use based on subscription model. So why the software as service model may be least flexible. So this is supposed to be noted because it is what is deployed to you, and whatever updates carries along is what you use. So it is the easiest to get up and running, we are sure, but it is not flexible, like, or it is the least flexible among the three service models. So it requires the least amount of technical knowledge or expertise to fully employ, right? It's simple. Just go pay for the subscription, for example, and then get access to what you're looking for. Then the shared responsibility model, I think it is this time that we'll talk about shared responsibility model now that we've talked about the three parts. So the shared responsibility model here applies to cloud service type, right? So the software as a service model that places the most responsibility with the cloud service provider and the least responsibility on the user, right? So the CSP is in charge of almost everything. So in the SaaS environment, you are responsible for the data that you put into the system, the device that you need to allow to connect to the system to access your data. And the user that have access to it. Nearly everything else, the cloud service provider is responsible. So the cloud service provider is responsible for physical security of the data center, the power, the network connectivity, and the application development, as well as the patches. Now let's look at the shared responsibility model in terms of the diagram. The SaaS, right? The PaaS, the IaaS. So the on-prem this time can be likened to a private cloud. Okay. So in terms of the SaaS, the information and data, you are the one responsible for it, as well as in terms of the PaaS, the IaaS, and then the on-premises, which is like the private cloud. Then in terms of the device, mobile and PC, the devices you use to access your data or your platform, you are the one responsible for that. The account and identity, you are the one provisioning and maintaining those accounts. But when it comes to identity and directory infrastructure for Microsoft Azure or Microsoft 365 or Microsoft Cloud generally, you use the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. So part of it, you are responsible, especially it has to do with configurations in terms of security, while the cloud service provider takes care of others by default. So you share that both when you're using the SaaS and when you are using the PaaS. But for your IaaS, you are the one responsible for it. Then applications. In terms of SaaS, you're not concerned about the applications, right, that are running. You just access them. But for PaaS, it's a shared responsibility. You are responsible for part of your application in terms of the code that you want to run. Then the cloud service provider is responsible to provide you the platform where the codes can run. But for IaaS, you are the one responsible for both the platform and the code that you are running on it. The network controls for SaaS, your cloud service provider is responsible completely. For PaaS, depend on the situation, but we can generally say that it is a responsibility of both the cloud service provider and the user or the customer. Operating system in terms of the PaaS and SaaS are responsibility of cloud service provider, while in terms of the IaaS, it is a responsibility of the customer as well as the on-premises also. The physical host in all of the cloud services, the physical host is of the cloud service provider to take care of. For you as a customer is accessing that in terms of virtualized environments. Physical network, they are going to be responsible for it completely. While the physical data center belong to the cloud service provider and it's their responsibility to take care of it. So in terms of the physical host and all of that, you would see that we have all of this in on-premises depending on the customer, because at this point he is the owner of everything that has to do with the on-premises environment. So that said, we may just want to look at the module assessment. Let's see what is there. So this is saying that which cloud service type is most suited to lift and shift migration from on-premises data center to cloud deployment. I think we said this, so let's hold on to that and we'll check the answer soon. So what type of cloud service type would a finance and expense tracking solution typically be? So we have seen that it is this. So let's just submit and see our answer. If we, yeah, look at it here. So we scored 100% and these are the correct answers, right? So just to summarize, we'll go to the summary of this module and see what is there. So in this module, you learned about the cloud service type and some common scenarios for each type. So you also reinforced how the shared responsibility model determine your responsibilities with different cloud service type. Learning objective. You should now be able to describe infrastructure as a service, describe platform as a service, describe software as a service, as well as identify appropriate use cases for each of the cloud services in terms of the IaaS, in terms of PaaS, in terms of SaaS. So if you've not subscribed to this channel, I think you may want to do that quickly so that we can keep learning together. And if you've not liked this video yet, you may want to hit on the like button just so YouTube can get to recommend it to more people. So the determination here is to help you succeed, and I hope that you find this useful. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Peace.